can't get someone to take care of my mom, and I really want her to go. Can you help me with this? And it's happening like 2 or 3 times a day where people are coming up to me. So Lori and I talked, and we shared some ideas, and we thought this would be a very opportune time to talk about this, because not only are we all aging, our parents are aging, and everyone around us. And as a nurse and someone who's been in the assisted living business, when I was 18 years old, I started working in retirement facilities. I owned and developed and managed assisted living. At the time I started, it was called an adult congregate living facility. Was anybody around when it was adult congregate living facility? Oh, Melanie. Okay, so luckily we got the name changed to assisted living facility, so that was a good thing. But during that process, and that's a tough business, that's 24/7. It's, you know, you have to have a cruise boat, you have to have a chef, you have to have activities night and day, and a medical overlay. And assisted living is not an easy job. So when I got out of it in 2002, I had already started responsive home health. And I started this in 1994 because I believed that, you know, home care was where it was going to be. Because if you ask 90% of the people out there who are approaching 80, 90 years old, they're going to say, oh, I want to stay at home. You know, it's not possible for everybody, but this is my mom. That would be a good idea since I was in assisted living, so that's what I did. I was also appointed by the governor to be on the long-term care commission that was formed in the 90s, it's been ages ago now. And I was on the National Board of Directors for the Assisted Living Federation of America for 4 years, and was very involved in assisted living. And happily, like I said, I got out and am focusing on home care totally since 2002. But I feel comfortable talking about assisted living, independent living, continuing care retirement homes, and we're going to talk about that more today. Alzheimer's. We don't know what Alzheimer's is. We see symptoms, but it's not diagnosed until autopsy. So if someone says, oh, well, they have Alzheimer's, well, they're basing that on some diagnosis, some kind of evaluation, but it's not a true diagnosis. It can only be done upon autopsy, where they go in, look at the brain. There are significant changes in the brain that they can find out through scans, but they cannot really truly identify Alzheimer's until after death. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about aging in place. What does Medicare pay for, which is not much. Long-term care insurance, and just a little bit about home care, because I do not do Medicare home care. I do just private. So Medicare pays for some things, and we'll talk about that as well. So planning for your older years, I've talked to my parents, and they had no plan. Most people don't, and it's surprising. A lot of people do a will, and they'll not put any advance directives, they'll not make a POA, they'll not have any kind of forward-looking plans like funeral arrangements. I mean, my stepfather passed away from pancreatic cancer. He was sick for a year, and he was going to make it. So what happened? My mom and I had to go to the funeral home and pick out all the things that relate to, what kind of pillow, in the casket. It was very depressing. And I begged my mom, please, don't ever let me have to do this again. So, but do my parents have funeral plans? No. They're 85 and 82, and now my mom has dementia. So I don't really know what her wishes are. So if you have the opportunity.
Can I ask a question? So if they don't have a plan, how do you encourage them to get a plan?
It's hard.
Because that's the situation I'm in. It's like they're in their 80s, and I ask the question, but I can't seem to make them.
If you have a certified financial planner or somebody, they have books through a lot of, like a family planning thing, and they ask them all those questions. And I used that with my parents, so I got most of the information I wanted. They still don't have a decision on whether they want to be cremated or whether they want to be buried, because they can't still talk about it, which is alarming. But I can share a book that I have that you could just present to them and just go over the different topics about what their wishes are, and if there's any like nonprofits that they want to remember, because a lot of people do have a favorite charity that they, even if it's $5,000 or $10,000, they want to be remembered by that charity. So it's important, and you can say, I want to have peace of mind that I'm following your wishes. I know you don't want to talk about it right now, but it would make me feel better if you talk about it. And if you don't want to talk about it with me, let's write it down. Do it with my brother, do it with another sibling if you don't want to talk to me about it.
What's the name of the book?
Actually, I got it from AXA Advisors, and I'll pull it out before we leave today. And I keep it with me. Believe it or not, it comes in handy.
I just wanted to mention one other resource. Online, the Conversation Project has some really nice tools you can download. They're geared very much toward having sort of the what do you want at the end of life conversation. Not really around the financial planning, wills, that kind of thing, and not so much about this period of aging. But the tools are give you some really good ideas about how to start the conversation and different ways to ask questions and that kind of thing. And it's all downloadable right there.
What's the website?
The Conversation Project.
The Conversation Project. Okay, I'll read that. I don't know if you guys saw this poster when you came in. And I feel like a juggler. I think we all feel like a juggler. So this is one of my favorite brochures, because it talks about how 50% of family caregivers feel forced to choose between caring for their children or their parents at least once a week. 20% feel that way every day. I'm one of the ones that has to worry about my mom every day, because my stepfather's there, but he's not that much help, but he's very tied in. I cannot do anything without his blessing, and I have to be very careful how I speak with him, and he's definitely an obstacle for me, I hate to say, to give him my mom care. And I, in private I can say, and families left New York, left Chicago, left wherever they're at, and came here. I wanted to list these things, and I know lists are boring, but as topics for us to interact in, we can look at these. I think the biggest obstacle is making sure that living safely at home. If they fall and break their hip, they're done. I mean, not everybody, but looking for depression. Usually doctors aren't very good communicators with the elderly. They can't hear, they can't see. They don't hear what the doctors say. They're intimidated by the doctors, so they don't ask questions. They're afraid. So we always make sure that my parents go in with a checklist of questions, and you bring the paper in. You make sure that, this is what mom's worried about. Please look over the checklist. And I mean, these days, unfortunately, it's hard to get a doctor to do a full examination on an elderly person. They should always look at their feet. If they have neuropathy, look at their toes. Check the full body. See if they have any ulcerations, their backs. If you're an advocate for the elderly, it's important that they're looking for different kinds of ulcerations and things on their body that, you may not have access to because you're the daughter or daughter-in-law, and they're not going to strip down and show you what's going on. So the doctor needs to be responsible with that. Medication management.
So that was one of the things with the communication that, and the doctors can't talk to, but we had my mother sign
with all of her doctors, that they can speak to us. So when she ended up in the ER, I called and oh yes, we've got your name right here. And I was able to get full information before I was able to get up there, because again, 266 miles away, but because we had done that in advance, I was able to
Lori,
have
that's the smartest
conversations
thing
with the doctors.
that you
Yes,
could have done,
because
because they will
what's it
not
called?
talk to you.
What is it called? I mean, I told my mom that she needed to sign, it's not a directive.
It's not a
but-
POA, but you can say who,
So that any of her doctors
personal health information
right,
release.
could speak to me, yeah.
They call it PHI,
Okay.
where
Personal
you
health
could, personal health information
release.
release. And you can list on the release who can receive your test results, any kind of diagnostic work. Or if there's problems, they're allowed to share that with you.
And you signed that at the hospital, or?
My mom had to sign it in advance. She did this as, we lost my dad first, but as part of going through that exercise with, she's now the only one, I made certain and said to her, you need to sign those documents in your doctor's office. You would have to have your dad sign that in those doctor's offices. Because otherwise, literally, you can't get any information really, unless out of the kindness of their heart they're willing to share, but not the level that you really need.
Right. That's a very good point. Thanks, Mark. Transportation becomes an issue because at some point they can't drive. Pets is another issue we run into a lot. If they can't drive, they can't go to the store, they can't get the pet food, they can't take the dog for a walk. Usually the screening test, they don't get the results. The doctor will call, they don't answer the phone. We can't, they're very susceptible to fraud and crime because a lot of people are lonely. They get excited when the phone rings. They're like, oh, it's somebody I can talk to. And a lot of these people are experts at being able, they know who they're calling, they know the age group, and they know, oh, I got somebody. They end up giving their credit card to them. And it's just amazing how frequently that happens. And it's so disheartening.
And it's really bad that they start to pray if there's a obituary and somebody sees that the other spouse has passed away. That's something to be really worried and careful about. That there are people that absolutely prey on that, and then they know that the person that there's someone alone.
Or the day of the funeral, they go and rob the
Yeah.
house because
Special place in hell.
nobody's there. I know.
Right.
I mean, it's just going in a negative way, but I mean, it's reality,
Yeah.
unfortunately. We talked about health insurance, piles of bills and mails and things like that. I have one of my best friends, her dad, would pay, like they'd send him a thing from St. Jude with a sad picture on it, and people would copy that. He was writing thousands of dollars of checks to the charities that, a lot of them were scams. St. Jude isn't, but I mean, they lose kind of sight of what they need to do with their bills and finance. And there's so much junk mail. It's hard to tell what's real and what's not. They stamp them and say it's important and you're going to expire if you don't fill this out right away and your warranty is expired. I even have to look at it sometimes because they're so authentic looking that you think, wow, I'm in big trouble here. But anyway, advanced directives, POAs, and I'll share with you that little book I have. I think that'll help.
POAs?
POAs, power of attorney, and you need that. If you're going to make any decisions, you can have a POA for health and a POA for financial. And, your parent may not want you to have both, but for health reasons, you want to be able to make their decisions. This is one of my favorite little cartoons. My name's Bill, and I'm forgetful. Hi, Carl. Forgetful support group. Like you were mentioning about, the stress that we're all in, juggling and doing the things we're doing. A lot of times, I feel like I'm in that support group. You think, geez, why don't I remember that? That's why I have Angel. She reminds me. But it's good. Now, technology has been really something that we've been looking into as an agency, and it can help. The lifeline, call, help, I can't get up, I've fallen and I can't get up. Those work. A lot of people are putting nanny cams in. They call them granny cans. So you can see if your mom woke up in the morning, and you don't put it in private areas like their bathroom or stuff, but you put it in the hallway, you put it in the kitchen, just to see if they're getting up to get their meals. Or the problem with it is you have to actually watch it, because, it's a big commitment to go on that every day and look and see if mom's up and, if she's taking her medication. But you can't do a lot with cameras now. We don't use them, but I know a lot of families are trying them now. There's fall detection things that the Lifeline actually has now, where it's a balance thing on their clothes that if they fall, it triggers an alarm because the balance on the machine goes off. So that's very cool. They have gram pads, so it's an iPad that's simplified for elderly people to use, and like the grandkids can send pictures and do all kinds of things. Telehealth, where you can send your blood pressure to the doctor, and there's a lot of neat things, but the problem with all this information is who's looking at it. Who's going to be looking at it? Are you looking at it as a responsible party? Is the physician actually going to look at your blood pressure log? Unless you're standing there saying, please look at this, the odds are, even if this is flowing to the doctor's office, it's not probably going to be seen. Every elderly person, and us included, not as elderly people, but just everybody needs an advocate to help if someone's sick. And there's a lot of online education and learning that elderly people can access if they're helped through that process. I'm just going to go over this real quick. Home modification. These seem really simple, but people don't realize it until you need it, and it's a problem. When my mom had her knee replacement, she didn't have a raised toilet seat. She didn't have a detachable shower head. She didn't have, she had glass sliding doors in a bathtub. That's a disaster. So making the bathroom wheelchair accessible with grab bars, adjustable shower head, removing glass sliding doors, raised toilet seat, especially if some kind of fracture or spinal problem. The bidets are nice. Not everybody is crazy about that, but I found them to be helpful. And something as simple as the toilet paper holder. You know how aggravating it is to take that thing out if you have arthritis and you have pain in your hands and you have any problem, you gotta take that out. I thought it said 21. I should have been 31. So I recommend, don't be vain, wear your glasses. And but lighting makes a difference too, because you can see so much better when you have light. The front loading washer and dryers are great for the elderly. Non-slip floors and the throw rugs. Oh, I had so many people with the walkers and they stick their toe underneath that throw rug and they fall, and it's really dangerous. If you can put a 36 wide door frame in, that's hugely helpful because they can get the wheelchair through. I mean, God forbid they ever need that. And no steps, obviously. The steps are lethal. And if there is a garage, a ramp to the house is really nice too. Comparing the cost, the average cost of a nursing home, and these numbers may be a little bit off, but it can go over $80,000 a year in cost. The average cost of living in assisted living is $43,500, and that's $119 a day. So it's expensive to get older. Private care in the home, this is just an average. This is Broward County average, about $18 to $20 an hour. Now I'm going to play you this little thing and I hope it works. This is part of the Alive Inside video, but it talks about This is the new TV as of today, so.
Yeah, that's it. Interest in saying, over there, I don't want to see it, I don't want to know about it.
Why are we changing now? Because it's not working. Because it's dehumanizing. And I think, quite frankly, I think baby boomers are saying, this is not acceptable. This is not how I want to be treated when I get older.
This was inspiring. But are we really interested in changing the way America ages?
You might not realize it, but the United States of America has only 6,000 geriatricians in a nation of 300 million people. Even worse, that number's not going up, it's going down.
This is unfortunate timing, because the challenges we're going to have to face are growing.
We're facing an epidemic of neurologic diseases on a global scale. A cheery thought. On this map, every country that's colored blue has more than 20% of its population over the age of 65. This is the world we live in. And this is the world your children will live in. For 12,000 years, the distribution of ages in the human population has looked like a pyramid with the oldest on top. It's already flattening out. By 2050, it's going to be a column, and will start to invert. And this is why that's not entirely a good thing. Because over the age of 65, your risk of getting Alzheimer's or Parkinson's disease will increase exponentially. There are 5 million Alzheimer's patients in the United States. In the next 10 years, that number will come close to doubling. We do not have the facilities, we do not have the resources, financial or otherwise, to cope with that number of people suffering from dementia. We have to find a way to help them age in place in a healthy manner.
Okay, well, that was uplifting. But unfortunately, it's the truth. My son was interested in nursing. He had his degree in management from Stetson. He came back here, was talking about maybe helping me out in my business. And he wanted to go to nursing school. So I said, oh, good, this is great. So, you know, he went to nursing, and he decided he wants to, you know, he's in Nepal right now climbing Mount Everest. So he decided he wanted to do something exciting. He wants to be a paramedic that works on air ambulances and rescues people. So people do not want, as millennials and even, you know, our age group, it just seems like working with elderly people is not something people want to aspire to. Millennials are not signing up to be home health aides. They're not, we have to make being a caregiver a lot more sexier, more interesting, or when we take care of us at this age rate. And it's going to be worse for younger people because there's going to be fewer and fewer people if we don't change how we look at aging. And there's a great book. I'm sure Melanie's book, and we'll be reading that soon as well. But this book is a must read. It's a little bit sad.
What is it?
But it's called Being Mortal. It's by
You read that.
Indian doctor, and you should have it as one of your TCI books because it's really a good book. And you can get it on audio too. You can listen to it in the car. So I highly recommend this. It talks about the reality. It talks a lot about where we're at as far as expanding interest in gerontology. And he talks about a gerontologist himself going through the aging process. And he goes, I'm doing exactly the opposite of what I taught everybody to do. So does everybody know about what Medicare pays for? No? Okay, we'll talk about that. Okay, so Medicare has parts A, B, C, and D. So Part A is usually the premium free part. That's the 80% that covers hospitalizations. Sometimes it'll cover skilled nursing facilities depending on the diagnosis, and if you spend over three nights in the hospital, you can get up to 100 days in a skilled nursing home. But there is a caveat to that. You have to show progress on rehabilitation. So if you are not progressing by the goals of the physical therapist, occupational therapist, if you're stagnant and you're not improving, then you'll get discharged. So the skilled home health services are included too, but that's also based on progress. You have to be going through goals, and you have to be taught and trained by your nurse or occupational therapist and show improvement. Even with occupational therapy, being able to reach to cabinets and put groceries away, and physical therapy, walking 10 feet and progressing to 20 feet would be examples of that. Part B is outpatient services. Those would be like flu shots, going for outpatient physical therapy, things like that. That's Part B. Part C are the HMOs, the Medicare Advantage plans, where everything's included. And Part D is the drug coverage, and you do have to buy that. So the drug coverage, if they have really high cost medications, is something to look into, but you have to there's a donut hole where it won't pay after a certain time, so you have to be aware of that. And every Part D plan has different, like if you're on a statin drug and you're using, I don't know, see, my mind's forgetting already. Lipitor. So not all plans have Lipitor. They go by brand names. So you have to choose a brand name that's in that group, and if it's not, you have to go to your doctor and say, oh, my coverage only covers this medication. So a lot of times you have to change the medication.
So I'm sorry for my ignorance, but you have to buy all 4 areas?
No, this one's free. And there's parameters, you have to look them up, but it's like if you've contributed through your taxes, working, your Medicare taxes, this is usually premium free.
Okay.
You can buy it if you are a United States citizen and you didn't work and you didn't have any tax contribution throughout your career. You can purchase it, but for most Americans it is free. The 20% is that supplemental policy we talked about, where you would get, because you want to make sure you cover the other 20%, because that could be a lot of money. So the supplemental policies are the ones that you purchase through AARP or wherever you choose to buy them. But this is what the government provides you, and this one you have to pay for.
But Part B only pays 80% also.
Part B, typically, they won't make you pay the balance. Like say flu.
The providers won't.
Right. So if you get a walk-in,
So a
to get a
physician
flu shot,
won't make you pay the 20%.
they shouldn't. No.
But Medicare does negotiate the rates for that. But I always think this is, I hate how Medicare does this because it's really misleading. Part C isn't, like you have to have Part A, you really have to have Part B. And if you don't buy Part D and then you want it later, you have to pay a fine. So you really need Part D. But Part C equals A, B, and D.
Right.
And so you can buy that instead. Like Part C should be over on the other side, because Part C is like instead of
Right.
A, B, and D, you can buy C.
Okay.
So
It's
we
very
have a
confusing.
classroom of really
So
super
confusing.
intelligent women.
Yeah.
Could you imagine being 85 years old
And trying
and
to
trying to figure out what this is? It's, so many people are dying with their long-term care insurance in place because they didn't, one, remember they had it, and two, didn't know how to access it. They don't know how to acquire, a claim with the insurance company. You need an advocate.
Yeah, and don't worry, because Medicare will send you a 100-page booklet in small type explaining everything you need to know about Medicare.
Yeah.
How does that help anybody?
I know. Well, and this is Medicare home health, which I don't do, but this is what, I mean, people call on a daily basis and ask us, less now, but, you know, does Medicare pay for this? Medicare doesn't pay for much. They used to. I would say in the 90s, Medicare was a long-term care benefit. I would say those people that had access to home care in the 90s, in early 80s and late 90s, they could get around-the-clock care through Medicare. It's not how it was set up originally, but they, you know, they set it up as an entitlement program, and there weren't that many accessing it. They didn't even have a complaint line. When all that fraud went on in Miami, you know, people were getting fake arms, and you know, they still had the arm that they were born with, and you know, there was a $60,000 bill in the Medicare explanation of benefits that, oh, how's your new arm doing? You know, and the guy's on the phone saying, I have the arm that I was born with. You know, I don't need an arm. So you know, it's the fraud in Medicare really put home health in a problem.
No, just at the time, if there's anybody that has to leave, you know, don't feel badly in getting up.
And getting up.
But we're, I think there's a lot more still to talk about.
You know what, I didn't time this. Usually I do, because this was supposed to take 30